All right. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Stories of Selling Human podcast. I'm your host, Alex Smith, and I started this podcast because I believe everyone in the world will someday be faced with a situation, could be business, could be personal, that requires you to create change. I think we all want to be heard, seen, and understood, but the people who will get our attention and convince, persuade, or influence us are not just salespeople. There are great people throughout all walks of life that we're drawn to. I'm going to share their stories here so we can tap into what makes us human, practice our human skills, and ultimately we'll all become better at selling by being human. All right, gang, we have a huge treat on the line today. This is someone who I've respected for a while, got into his books just recently, and we're going to get a ton of value from. So this person, you've probably seen him on stages if you've been to any sales keynote in the last couple years. This person talks to small audiences of 50 all the way up to 16,000. He speaks with Olympic athletes, political leaders, even a former United States president. He's best known for his book that he co-authored called The Go-Giver with John David Mann, and also Endless Referrals, as well as a series of books in the Go-Giver series. He's sold over 1 million copies of The Go-Giver, and since its release, it's stayed on the top 25 list on the Porchlight's business book bestsellers list, and it's been translated into 30 languages. So this person has now sold over 2 million books. He's a member of the National Speakers Association, an inductee to their Hall of Fame. I am so pleased to welcome none other than Bob Burg to the podcast. Welcome, Bob.
Wow, what a great introduction. Thank you, Alex. Great to be with you.
I mean, if you read off your full bio, Bob, it may take the full 30 minutes. But I'm just grateful to have you here with us.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Bob, years later after authoring The Go-Giver, it's one of those timeless, like, classic books, I feel like. And, it's a quick read, but, something that, really it's just important for people to internalize and actually practice and apply. It's one of those books it's not just like a read and kind of move on. It's a read and kind of apply and internalize, and like Arianna Huffington said in the beginning, like it's a way of being. It's not just something you do, being that. So before I ask you, maybe I'll just, in the beginning, because I think you might take this question from a lot of different places. I ask all my guests, Bob, when you think of the term, because you saw the title of this podcast, Stories of Selling Human. You're familiar with Dan Pink's book, To Sell is Human.
Sure.
Yeah. So when you think of the term, like, sell something and sell it by being human, what does that mean to you, and how would you define that way of selling?
Well, I think of selling itself as being something very benevolent. I think what happens is there's a lot of people, the biggest challenge with selling is that people have a misperception about it, right? So so many people think that selling is about trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need, right? That's not selling. That's called being a con artist. So selling, by definition, is simply discovering what the other person does want, does need, does desire, and helping them to get it. Now, it takes a skill set to do that, okay? It takes really, more than anything, though, a focus on really desiring to bring value to others. And I think Dan talked a lot about that in his book, the human part. But to me, if you're selling, not conning, but selling, well, that is very human, right? And, here's what's interesting. And in our follow-up to the Go-Givers That Sell More, John David Mann, my awesome co-author, and he's a great wordsmith. And what he found, and I love this, he said, the old English root of the word sell is salan, which meant to give. So when you're selling, you're literally giving. Now, someone might say, well, wait a second, Burg, that's clever and all, but isn't that just semantics, selling, giving? What are you really giving? Well, let's say you're in front of someone. It's a selling situation. And again, as you said, it might be business. It might be, where you're going to go to dinner, or it might be why someone should, why your child should study harder in a certain. So it could be anything, right? And so when you're in front of someone, you are selling. So what are you giving? Well, I suggest you're giving time, attention, counsel, education, empathy, and most of all, value. So if we look at selling this way, we see it as a whole different. We see it as being very human. It's one human caring about another human.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, I thought it was just so, like, I saw a summary. It's just like, even in your LinkedIn profile, it's like, we should shift our focus from getting, because we all know what we want to get out of it. We want the signature on the dotted line. We want to, get a deal closed. We want to get, we all have outcomes, and it's completely okay to have, goals and things that we want to get out of things, right? But you say shifting your focus from constantly providing value. That doesn't necessarily preclude you or erase the fact that we all want things. We all want to, being a go-giver doesn't say you don't want to get things, right? So maybe explain that shift in focus.
It's that. Well, and you hit it on the head. It's a shift in focus. You're shifting your focus from getting to giving. Now, when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others. Understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant or more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well. So there's no martyrship in doing this. Here's the thing, okay? And I say this so often when I speak at sales conferences. Nobody is going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. Okay? They're not going to buy from you because you need the money or because you have a goal. Okay? They're not going to buy from you just because you are a nice human being. Okay? They're going to buy from you because they believe that ultimately they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. Okay? This is simply human nature. So that's why if you, and by the way, this is actually great news for that person who has a true, authentic desire to bring value to others. Okay, so again, there's nothing doormatty, self-sacrificial, or martyrish about doing this. You're not shifting your focus off of yourself and onto them, even just because you're a nice person. It is good business to do so. Again, when we're in an economic environment where no one is forced to buy from you.
Yeah. I think you were saying something like some people might say this is like the term go-giver and okay, just constantly giving and focusing on giving. And like you said the word nice, and I think people confuse the terms nice, kind, benevolent, right, compassionate, they kind of, or giving, a giver, right? Like they, maybe, there's a confusion around, hey, we're not running a charity here, right? Or we have to, there has to be some, something in it for us, right? Like, yes, we want to provide value, right? But it's not that, you've said something in the book too. It's not about just nice guys finishing last or things like that. It's like about a certain focus. So I'm curious the feedback that you've gotten from maybe your detractors, and what you say to them.
Yeah. Let's talk about that premise first, about that. And it's that people ask the go-giver, are you and John saying, is the moral of the story that nice guys, nice gals, nice people finish first? Is that what it's about? No, it's not. Now, do nice people finish first? Sure. Do nice people finish last? Sure. Okay. So it's not just about that. Now, being nice is a great thing. And by the way, here I'm using interchangeably nice and kind. The two aren't necessarily the same. One can act nice as a way of manipulating another human being, but right here, let's use them interchangeably.
Yeah.
Right? Being nice is a great thing. Being
Yeah.
nice actually makes it easier for people to want to do business with you. I mean, by and large, people would rather do business with someone nice as opposed to someone nasty. But it's not enough. And I mean, I think I can say that with confidence because, you and I, everyone watching this, we all know people who we would describe as being simply nice people, who we would also have to describe as being simply broke people. Okay, so again, it's being nice is a fantastic thing, and in and of itself, it's helpful, but it is not near enough. Success is a matter of doing the correct things in the success process that allows a person to be successful and finish first, if you will.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about, like, you outlined brilliantly. Like, I just, I picked this up and just the story that you tell with these laws of, success. You kind of work people through, just laws, in these stories that your protagonist found out, and I'm sure, like, just you've learned some of this through your own life. So this person learned about, like we talked about value, and give it, your success is determined by how much more you give in value than take in payment and things like that. You work people up. I'm curious about you mentioned in the back of the book someone that kind of helped you I'm sure you took these off of real stories, and you said, the person that he learned these from, I think, is, Pander, like the person that Joe was going to.
Yeah, Pindar was the main mentor.
Pindar, yeah, the mentor. Was based off a guy named Bob Proctor. So tell me a little bit about, like, where you learned some of these laws and what a person like him was like in real life.
Oh, well, yeah, Bob Proctor was a great guy. We modeled Pindar loosely, on Bob. And we pictured, what Bob looked like, his presence, his voice, the way he was. Bob was a very, very kind man, always came from a place of prosperity, great guy. I learned a lot from Bob, from his, books and audios and everything. He certainly wasn't my only teacher in terms of learning that. It was just we modeled Bob because we both had such great respect for him.
Oh, wow.
And
Cool.
both feel we did learn a lot from him. But it was his basic overall sense of prosperity and mindset and caring and genuine, just being a good guy that we liked, that we wanted to model. I think John and I both had lots of great teachers. We're both avid readers. We've both been entrepreneurs. We both, as a writer, he's gotten to interview the most successful people in the world, and in speaking, I've gotten to appear on stage with some of the most successful people. So I'm always asking questions, and so is John. We've both individually studied success for many, many years. So when I approached him with this idea, because I had the thought of making this a parable as opposed to just a how-to, and John's just a brilliant writer and wordsmith, and so I asked him if what he thought of the idea, and so we really merged a lot of our own experiences and learnings and so forth into this.
Yeah, I love the background of the story. Can you, like, I guess, since, writing it, have you seen, like, what are things that you've seen, like, people you've met that, maybe helped reinforce, like, some of the principles in this book? Because, like, just, like, some of these, it's just simple things, right? Like providing value, creating influence, and they seem simple, but not everything that is so simple is simplistic by any means. But talk to me a little bit about, like, people you've met, since this book, and maybe some of the things you've learned maybe in your own life about some of these laws.
Well, we love hearing stories from people who've applied the principles and have found a significant difference in their business. We love hearing from parents who tell us they do these as family studies with their kids, and people. We love that. There's nothing that an author or co-author loves to hear more than that people have benefited from it, not just in business but personally. I think of the stories I like the most are the people who. Well, let me give you an example, and this was actually pretty soon after the book came out, and it was really in the midst of the financial crisis back in 2008, 2009, and we heard from a entrepreneur who had a roofing business outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And during the financial crunch, he and his fellow roofers were all in the same spot, and nobody was getting their roofs fixed. And that was because, the money was tight. They couldn't, take a chance on not getting reimbursed from their insurance companies, and the whole bit, right? So this particular guy, as he wrote to share with us, did the same thing all his colleagues did. He kind of pulled back on what he was offering because he was having to try to somehow scratch out as much money as he could while giving the least, right? And so that's, of course, the opposite. He said he read The Go-Giver and he realized he was going about it all wrong. He said he had to find a way to bring more value, add more value for what he was charging. And so what he did is he had this great idea. He researched the insurance aspect of roofing and figured out how to systematically be able to collect the
premiums?
How to work with the insurance companies.
Okay.
How to work with the insurance companies to get his customers reimbursed the full amount with the less stress, less hassle.
Took that hassle off the customers,
right.
and
So
with the insurance.
So now what he would do when he'd approach someone who he knew needed their roof repaired, he wouldn't ask if they wanted their roof repaired. He knew they wanted it. People just weren't doing it. Now it was, I can show you how to collect the money that's owed to you from your insurance company as much as you are, qualified to receive in the shortest time possible with the least hassle, and I can walk you right through how to do it. Boom. His business just boom, it just killed.
Wow.
So that to me is, and what he did, he figured the law of value, find out how much more about how can you make that experience for that person so spectacular that they feel as though they're receiving much more in value than what they paid for, while you also make a very healthy profit.
Wow. What is, like, when you think about, I think about some people that might, just say, well, yeah, I'm a giving person. Like, I'm always open to helping people out, almost like passive giving, right? Like they're, every once in a while they'll donate to charities, or they genuinely view themselves as a good, person, and they'll maybe give someone $1, a homeless person $1. What is that difference between a passive giver and, a go-giver that you would describe in your book?
Well, we love charity and we hold it as a high value. We hope everybody does, but that's not really what we're talking about in terms of the go-giver. That's not what the book is about. Again, when we talk about giving, we're talking about providing value to the marketplace. And what is the marketplace? A group of individuals, right, who might need, want, or desire what you offer, who can benefit from your services. The key is understanding the difference between price and value. Because price is a dollar figure, it's a dollar amount. Value is different. Value can be defined as the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to someone that they will willingly, in the business sense, exchange their money for this? If we're not talking business sense, then we're talking about their time, their energy, their commitment, what have you. But let's say in this case, their money for this, and be ecstatic that they did, be glad that they did. Now, to work effectively within this understanding, right, you've got to know that value is always in the eyes of the beholder. It's not what you or I, what we think is of value. It's not what we think they should think is of value. It's what they believe is of value. And that's what we've got to provide them. And that person who does that, again, whether we're talking business, personal, relational, whatever it is, okay, the person who can provide value to others in a way that other person sees it as being of value, that's the person who's going to succeed.
Yeah. Do you when you coach sales reps and things like that, I'm curious about those ways that you kind of help people, I don't know, frame questions or maybe, come to realizations on their own, because, one of the best things a sales trainer ever told me was, you don't get to determine value. Where they ask the room, like, who determines value in a sales situation? Is it us or the customer? Like, who creates and determines that value? And nobody raised their hand, and it was like a trick question or something like that. And eventually they said just what you said. It was like, we don't create it. How could we determine it, right?
Well, no. Let me. So can I stop you for 1 second?
Yeah.
Let me just give out. And I love what the sales trainer said. He's right. Actually, we do create value. We have to create value.
Yeah.
We don't determine the value.
Right. Exactly.
The buyer determines the value.
Yeah. Exactly. So
exactly. So the trainer was absolutely right in what he was saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So I misspoke there. So yes. So they determine it, but certainly we create it. There's something about our product. There's something about how we present it. There's something about how we position it. We're not trying to push it on them, but we understand them well enough. We're asking the right questions to help them, because a lot of times some people can't articulate maybe what they really value. Maybe they think they value one thing and it's a small thing, but what they really value is a much bigger problem, or it's connected to a much bigger thing. So I wonder how you kind of help coach salespeople and just people in general about what to think about when you're kind of guiding people through that process and determining value on their own, because there's probably things to say to someone to help them determine it on their own, and definitely things you want to stay away from saying that can be seen as, well, don't tell me what to think or believe, or what my problem is, Bob. Like once they feel that, and we can all feel those salespeople are like, okay, you need a new roof. You need this and this and this. Much different than asking people questions about what they what they do, how they interact, what their roof is like, what problems they have, so that they reach on their own. So yeah, curious about those things to do and maybe not to do when you're helping people realize that.
Yeah, and this is why what you said was so important when it comes down to, some people don't really know what it is they want. They can't necessarily voice it. Why? Because they don't know your business as well as you know your business, right? And so that's why sales is so important. And that's why that personal touch is so important. That's why that human-to-human connection is so important. So how do we determine what it is they truly value? Well, it begins, as you said, with asking questions and then listening. Really, really listening. Not just listening with your ears. That's the surface listening. That's the, listening while we're waiting to respond, right? It's listening with your ears, but it's listening with your eyes. It's listening with your body language. It's listening in such a way that you are trying to really deeply understand what this person is saying. And then it's going deeper than that, because we have to understand this is so important. As human beings, we all live our lives according to our individual beliefs or belief system. We see the world in a certain way. And as human beings, we tend to believe that everyone else basically sees the world the way we see it, which makes total intuitive sense, right? How could it be any different? It's all we know. So that's why we have to understand, first, what we believe is of value may not be what they believe is of value. But even when we hear them utter a phrase, we interpret that phrase according to our own definitions, right? Which may not be exactly what that person means. So we've got to be willing to know that we don't necessarily know where they're coming from. And so we have to be able to gently and tactfully ask them to clarify to make sure we understand. We do it in such a way, of course, that we don't make them defensive, but we make them feel very comfortable with the process. Just for my own clarification, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Love saying
when you
that.
say boom, right? Okay, it's as simple as that. But it's being willing to go through the work of doing that.
Yeah. Wow. What, if you could think about what you hope the future is for this some of these methods, I don't know, it sold over 1 million copies and you've sold over 2 million books, and you're still producing so much amazing content, Bob, with your podcast and books. Yeah. What is your hope 5-10 years from now from some of the concepts in some of these books, if you could kind of fast forward in time?
I would just like to see more and more people embracing these concepts. I think a lot of people already do, and a lot of people already did well before the Go-Giver.
Yeah, for sure.
It said there's nothing new, under the sun, and the 5 laws that John and I shared in the book, were based on principles that have been around since there have been market economies, right? And so, I remember the late great Jim Rohn used to say, "Beware the person who comes offering you new fundamentals." Like new antiques. No, so there's nothing new. We maybe have gave the laws names and put it in story form. Again, that's John's brilliance in his writing, but there's nothing really new. And the first adapters, if you will, or adopters, I guess would be the proper term of the book, were not the people who needed it. It was the people who had already built huge businesses, and they wrote to us saying, "This is how I did it. This is basically what I did," but nobody believes me. Because everybody's used to the old stories about how for sales and building a business you must be horrible and ruthless and take advantage of people and all that nonsense. Not that there aren't people who do that. It's a big world. There's people who do things
for sure
that we don't agree with a lot, but by and large, and especially to the degree you're working within a market-based economy where no one's forced to do business with you, the only way you can earn a fantastic income and build a huge company is by providing a lot of value to people who choose to do business with you because they believe it's in their best interest to do so.
Yeah. Well, I know we're coming to a close. What I hope is, I just what you said, that more people come to you and kind of are willing to be, just public at some of this, and that, our mindsets change about what sales could be, and what the profession could be, because I love where you said it doesn't preclude, you can't just be a giver and do this and just expect to be wildly successful. Like you said, there are very, great, nice people that are successful CEOs, and there are nice people that are broke. But, I love the quote. My dad also grew up in the Quaker religion. And when you said, that quote, "When you pray, move your feet." So it doesn't preclude a sound business plan. So my hope is that people kind of, get more intentional about these things, and not just think that they're basic. Of course, they're just a given, right? Being a go-giver should be a given. It should be a, really a truly intentional way of being, that I hope people can, actually create habits around. That's what I really hope.
I love it.
But Bob, I know as we kind of come to a close, I ask people a fun question about you, Bob. So so that we carry this on for people to get to know you and me and everything. So it's just a fun, silly question about you. But Bob, just so our listeners can connect to you, if I asked your family, your people closest to you, something that is just so totally you, that is just so unique, it just would only be something you would do, or maybe it's an event that's something that could only happen to Bob Burg, what might they tell me? Something that is, could only happen to you, or that is just so totally you, that describes you?
Let's see. Probably I'm kind of klutzy. If you remember the old Dick Van Dyke show, you've probably seen reruns back in the 60s when he comes in the house and he trips over that ottoman on the way. That's something I would do.
Okay. Bob Burg, the classic go-giver, but also occasional klutz. Okay. Well, Bob, where can we, our listeners, just continue to, where would you hope or want them to connect with you and kind of find out more about what you stand for and what you do?
Yeah, my website's Burg, BURG.com. And while they're there, they can, if they like, subscribe to my daily impact email that comes out Monday through Friday. There should be an annoying little pop-up that comes up in about 10 seconds, and they can subscribe there.
That's excellent. Well, Bob, you gave us a ton of wisdom. Thank you so much for what you put out into the world, and hope this is not the last conversation, and just thank you for what you've given to me personally and through the conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you greatly. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Bob.